It's not good for man to be alone for too long, but it's also not good for man to be known by or friends to too many people. After God created Adam, he said this in Genesis 2:18, "It is not good for the man to be alone." But then King Solomon said in Proverbs 18:24, "A man of too many friends comes to ruin." Now, I'm a millennial. I was a child in the 90s, and I was around for the creation of the internet and the World Wide Web and the creation of social media. So as I was growing up, the technological advances changed the perspectives of an entire generation. Influence, as a verb, means to affect or alter, or to have an effect on the condition or development of fill in the blank. And I believe that there is within each person an innate desire for influence, with every person carrying just varying degrees of that desire. For example, a mother and a father, they want to fulfill their desire for influence in the lives of their children. A teacher, for example, wants to influence her students to learn and to mature. A pastor wants to influence his flock. A coach wants to influence his team. But this positive innate desire is often corrupted into something else, as is the case with pretty much anything good that God creates. But this is especially the case with recent generations. This God-given desire to inspire and to influence is often corrupted into the desire for fame, which is not always attached to the desire for fortune. But fame is the desire for influence corrupted, because it's turning a positive desire inward. Whereas positive influence is synonymous with service and servanthood and volunteering, it is corrupted for self-service and selfishness in order to make much of oneself. John Piper was once asked if it was a sin to desire to be famous. He said, "Yes, it is, though it may not be a sin to desire to be influential. And the problem arises when the pleasure sought in being made much of is greater than the pleasure sought in being of service." Now, of course, influence is misused for other reasons as well, but my point is focused on this desire for fame. It's turning a positive thing into a negative, righteous influence into making much of oneself. However, there are many cases where a person has no desire at all to be famous, yet that's where they find themselves. We'll talk about that in a moment. But when you consider any person who has ever been famous, whether we're considering things secularly or religiously, it almost always has a negative effect on the person. Almost always. To be famous a century ago was a much harder task, and it was easier to handle, really. But in this generation, it's easier to become famous and impossible to handle. Take a popular actor, for example, who just passed away this week, Matthew Perry. While an autopsy has yet to be revealed, it's going to take a while, it seems clear to me, given his cryptic social media posts and his history with substance abuse, that his death was likely suicidal. And I don't want to imply any relapse of bad habits of his yet, but the comedic Friends actor was found dead in his hot tub. Now, most journalists and the Perry fan club are hoping for and sticking to natural causes for now, citing heart problems or even heat stroke. But again, just take a look at his last few social media posts, and even these so-called natural causes would likely be a consequence of his past decisions. Perry was one of the most popular, highest paid television actors of all time, but especially in the 90s when Friends was airing. In total, earning him almost $100 million just over the course of those 10 seasons. In fact, in the final season, he was making over $700,000 an episode. And that's not counting what he would continue to earn from reruns and streaming deals for the last 2 decades. He was born in 1969 and was acting on television by the age of 10. That's important. By the age of 10. Perry appeared over the course of his life and his career on over 40 television shows. 40. Being nominated for 24 awards. He was also in several films, and he won 3 of them, the most significant being a SAG award for the show Friends. And though he was born in Massachusetts, his parents divorced when he was just a baby, and his mother remarried and raised him in Ottawa, Canada. Now, listen to this part of his story. Remember, he started television acting when he was a boy. Entertainment Weekly reported that Perry developed a dependence on drinking as early as 14 and admitted, by the time I was 18, I was drinking every day. So he started drinking when he was 14, and he says by the age of 18, he's drinking every single day. And it also says, yet he was desperate to make it in Hollywood. And this is what he prayed. God, you can do whatever you want to me. Just please make me famous. So after moving from Ottawa to Los Angeles at the age of 15, Perry had developed a drinking habit, and he was begging God to make him famous. Now, the Entertainment Weekly article goes on to say, eventually he was taking as many as 55 Vicodin pills a day. Perry estimated that he's been through detox 65 times and went to rehab at least 15 times. Perry told Vanity Fair, I've probably spent $9 million or something trying to get sober, and part of this exorbitant cost is due in part to his 14 stomach surgeries, according to People magazine. Now, why do I bring up Matthew's story? Because it's the unfortunate poster child, and he's the unfortunate poster child for this problem. People long for fame and fortune because they think it will fulfill their desires. Desires that they don't understand to be really a positive desire for influence. And they make it their life's work, their ambition, and their total ambition to achieve that fame and success, and then only collide with full force into the wall of disappointment, only to discover the utter disparity that fame and fortune are unfulfilling. But once they've climbed and worked tirelessly and have some have slept around, they've committed nasty deeds, they've cut throats and cheated to get ahead, just all in order to reach that place at the top. And I'm not saying that Matthew did any of that, but they're then stranded at the top of the totem pole with virtually no way to get back down. And in this age, everybody can see you. Everybody can see you. We live in the age of information. A celebrity cannot just be a celebrity on the silver screen or the TV screen. No, their very lives are a part of their performance. Where do they eat? Who are they dating? How much weight have they gained or lost? Who are they friends with? Did you see what they did? Look at how bad she looks. Did you see what she posted? What happened to him? And the fame becomes a monster who stalks your every move, and nobody can handle it. No one. Not one single person can handle it. Matthew's case was extraordinary because he started drinking as a child, and his mother, in my opinion, seemingly shoved him into show business, but I'm only theorizing. But every one of these people rise to this level of fame and fortune and come to the same unfulfilling realization, and they have to fill the void, the emptiness, with something, just as Matthew did. I know we're talking about an actor, but everyone else who broke their backs to become a CEO or a member of Congress or a president all ultimately face the same exact thing. But their daily lives aren't as scrutinized and popularized as these Hollywood types, so they all turn to something to deal with their emptiness. Alcohol, drugs, and sex work for a moment. Working is a distraction for a moment. Partying and leisure is a distraction for a moment, but none of it is quenching the thirst they've had since the day they desired fame and fortune. How many pastors and church leaders have we seen completely blow up their church and their ministries for this very same reason? If anything, this lesson should be a deterrent to mega churches and satellite campuses and global churches. Just consider Carl Lentz, a celebrity pastor for Hillsong who was friends with the likes of Justin Bieber and Kevin Durant, yet blew up his career by his marital infidelity, and he was accused of sexual assault too. Johnny Hunt was accused of sexual assault. Brian Houston was apparently using pills and alcohol when he committed sexual misconduct. Perry Noble was removed by his church for his alcohol abuse. Matt Chandler was placed to the side for an inappropriate relationship. These are all church leaders with massive followings. They're famous. And ultimately, the pressure of popularity got to them. How many of them wanted the fame? It's impossible to know. Because not everybody who becomes famous desires that in the first place. There are plenty of examples that I could probably give, but of course, our ultimate example in all things is Jesus, who did not come to us in order to be famously known and recognized. But that's what inevitably happened. Luke's gospel tells us that Jesus came for the purpose of seeking and saving that which was lost. He came for the express purpose of salvation. Philippians chapter 2 describes his humility, that he lowered himself to the bottom of the totem pole. It says Jesus emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, and that word means a slave, a permanent slave. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. So Jesus was not making much of himself or seeking fame and worldly success. He enslaved himself to the mission and will of the Father and died for you and me. But as Jesus conducted his short-lived earthly ministry, he healed people and he cast out demons and he performed many miracles, unbelievable things that inevitably resulted in fame and a cult-like following. Everywhere he would go, people would show up to hear him teach and to see him work miracles. So, how did Jesus handle fame as an inevitable consequence of carrying out his mission? Luke also tells us that the news about him was spreading even further, and large crowds were gathering to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. A large crowd, many people. But Jesus himself would often slip away to the wilderness and pray. So what you can see from the writings of Luke and the Apostle Paul is the humanity of the Son of God. The pressure of fame and attention and popularity drove Jesus into the woods. He got away from everybody and everything because it was so very taxing to have the attention and to do what he was doing. But he wasn't just going on a vacation or some leisurely camping trip. What was he doing? He was praying. Luke tells us the same thing in Luke 6:12. It was at this time that he went off to the mountain to pray, and he spent the whole night in prayer to God. He was escaping the limelight to spend time with the one who was truly fulfilling, God, his Father. All of this to say, Jesus didn't want to be famous. He just wanted to do the will of his Father in heaven. He wanted to make much of his Father, not much of himself. He came to serve others, not to be served by others. He came to influence others toward repentance. But in doing God's will, he naturally became famous. And he dealt with the pressure of popularity by retreating into seclusion with the source of his life and strength in God. But that was 2,000 years ago. And this is 2023. Coincidentally, there's even a label for those who are widely followed on social media: influencers. These are people who are, according to the Urban Dictionary, prominent figures on a social media platform who generally exchange financial instruments or special benefits for endorsements. In other words, businesses look for people who have a gaggle of followers. Then they endorse them by either paying them or by giving them things to promote in their posts so that they can reach the millions of followers that person has, because that person has influence in their lives. People are quitting their jobs to become influencers. They want to become famous. They want to scratch this natural itch for influence by becoming these bought and paid for influencers. And I only describe these influencers because they're merely a symptom of this deeper issue. And that is this corrupted desire for fame and acclaim. In 1 Thessalonians 4:11, Paul says that you should make it your ambition. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend to your own business, and work with your hands. The NIV says you should mind your own business. A large portion of my generation and Gen Z and Generation Alpha makes it their ambition to lead a noisy life. They work and strive for attention and volume. But Paul says, don't do that. You need to work to have a quiet life. And the Greek word for quiet means to be silent. He says to mind your business. And the literal phrase says to attend to your own. That means you don't overly involve yourself in the lives of others, but it also means you don't publicize your entire life, like into the lives of others. And then he says to work with your hands. In my own words, this means get a job. Get a job. And of course, with the context, he probably means a job that doesn't involve amplifying yourself and inserting yourself into the lives of others. He's talking about work that you actually do with your hands. I mean, Jesus was a carpenter. Peter and James and John and Andrew were fishermen. Paul was a leather worker or a tent maker. People were not made to be famous, not even Jesus. And the evidence for such a claim is abounding and astounding. So to the people of my generation, the millennials, and the younger generations, look at the impossible lifestyle of fame and success. And no, it's nothing that it's cracked up to be. Nothing. In the best case scenario, you just barely survive it. In the worst case scenario, you kill yourself from it, or it kills you. So make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. Mind your business. And find a job to work with your hands. Channel your desire for influence into its proper place in humble service to others. Getting quality, good-priced meat products is proving to be increasingly difficult these days. With Bidenflation, the prices of everything in the store is just going through the roof. When you make fuel more expensive, that costs the farmer more, it costs the shipper more, it costs the grocer more, and it ultimately costs you more. That's why you need to check out Good Ranchers. They'll ship directly to your house. They're 100% American beef, chicken, seafood, and pork, all sourced from independent farms in the United States. Check the link in my show notes and use the code RANCHER1010 for 10% off their best-selling Ranchers Classic Box.